In this video, me and you are going to turn your aim from this to this.
One on 4 remaining. Good to go. 5 seconds to go. You're out of time.
How are we going to do this? Well, the first step is recognizing why your aim is bad in the first place. The majority of players in the game think that they have bad aim, actually don't have bad aim, but they lose gunfights due to positioning, game sense, or lack of mechanical awareness. But because they don't know that, they think that it's because of their bad aim. So before we even talk about getting better aim, let's make sure first that you aren't one of those people. Do you constantly die to people who you aren't even looking at? Do you get refragged often? Then your aim isn't the issue, it's actually your positioning. Do you notice that people seem to have way more reaction time than you, or you're getting pre-fired often? Then you're holding angles incorrectly. Do you find that you don't know where the enemies are going to come from next, where they are, or they're surprised whenever they're just on sight? Then you lack game sense, map knowledge, and awareness. No amount of aim labs will change that fact, so focus on those things first before worrying about your aim and how to get it better. If you, however, know for a fact that your aim is bad, then let's begin. When it comes to having bad aim, there are 4 main reasons why you have bad aim. Crosshair placement, the actual location of where you're placing your crosshair before the gunfight even starts when you're holding the angle. Flicking, the art of getting your crosshair to the enemy when you're about to take the gunfight. Recoil control, which is the control of the recoil of the weapon after you get into the gunfight. And tracking, how accurate you are at keeping your crosshair on a moving enemy after the gunfight has started. This is the most underrated and underused skill by most Siege players. And having all of the other 3 previous skills in this video won't matter if you don't have tracking down as well. So make sure you stick to the end of the video to make sure you know how to do it. But firstly, let's talk about the reason you have bad aim specifically. That being crosshair placement. This is arguably the easiest thing to learn and the easiest thing to fix if you don't have it. In Rainbow Six Siege, if you headshot someone, they will immediately die because Rainbow Six Siege is a one-shot headshot game. So naturally, aiming head level and having your crosshair placement head level will net you more consistent kills and consistent aim. Too many times have I seen lower ranked individuals just aiming toe level, and then they're wondering why they have bad aim or why they're losing consistent gunfights. If your crosshair is naturally head level, you will win over double the amount of gunfights that you do now. To do this, I can show you a few tricks in game. The first thing that you can do to actually improve this skill is just barricading doors in the site, kind of like this. If you're playing Jaeger for top floor site, you can barricade this door and immediately unbarricade it. Now, because of these buckles right here on the doorway, you know exactly where head level is at all times. So if you know that you're going to be sitting inside of sight kind of like this, holding an angle, now you have zero excuse to aim anywhere lower than exactly where head level is, because you can clearly see this buckle right here that shows you exactly where aiming head level is. So this is a great way for beginners to learn exactly where head level is and drill it in their minds. The next thing you can do to improve your crosshair placement is going into the map training game mode. The map training game mode allows you to be able to see dummies that have spawned in the map wherever they tell you that they've spawned, and because of this, they always stand up, and they always stand up standing still. This is great for warm-up routines. If you want to warm up with your correct crosshair placement, you can go into map tutorials and shoot dummies that will always be head level. What I personally like to do myself is I'll get a DMR or a one-shot weapon of some sort, so that way I'm only actually able to shoot them once, so I know that I'm aiming head high level whenever I do this. So it is another great way that you can practice actually consistently aiming head level instead of actually just learning it with that barricade trick. But now that we've gone over how to learn it and how to practice it, let's go over how you can do it in game. Well, whenever you spawn into a game, the game naturally will spawn in your character model aiming head level. So if you don't have the luxury of being able to do a map tutorial before you start the game, or you don't want to make your teammates mad at you because you're barricading random doorways in sight, then just know that whenever you spawn in and you're aiming head level, that's the level you need to be aiming in. Now, the reason that I'm showing you crosshair placement first in this video is because it's actually the easiest and simplest thing that I can show you that you can learn first. And it's the best thing I can show you if you want to improve your aim immediately. Reason 2, however, is a bit more challenging. This is flicking. Because of the nature of Siege as a game, flicking is one of the most common mechanics you will use in the entire game because most of the game is linear and happens on an x-axis, this being left to right. All this means is that things are happening from right to left or left to right a lot more than they're happening in a game that's more three-dimensional, where things are happening a lot more up and down. Take Overwatch, for example. If you're going against a Pharah as a Soldier 76, not only do you need to learn exactly how to aim left to right, but you need to learn how to aim left, right, up, down, diagonal left, diagonal right, diagonal bottom left, diagonal bottom right. You get the idea, because people are flying around on your screen. But in Siege, people are just walking left to right. So you really only have to worry about flicking as much on a X to Y horizontal axis. The only times you really take gunfights up and down in Siege is if you're playing vert or trying to contest somebody that's playing vert on the bomb site that you're playing on. So flicking, which is typically a horizontal skill, is something that most Siege players have to be good at in order to even compete on the most average and basic levels of this game. To explain how you can get good at this, you need to ask yourself this question: what is flicking? Flicking, in its simplest form, is the mechanical ability to be able to move your crosshair from point A to point B as fast as possible and as accurate as possible. But what most people don't understand is there's two parts to flicking: the macro flick and the micro flick. The macro flick is the big movement that you take from point A to point B, where the micro flick is the small readjustment you make after your crosshair is in the general area for your flick. Now, most people aim like this. In fact, if you slow down actual footage from your favorite aimer on YouTube or on Twitch from any game, they aim like this too. They're just so good and so fast at this two-point system that you don't even notice it, and it just seems like they're doing one fast movement. To practice this, you can easily go into the shooting range and use lane 3 to practice your macro flicking. To do this, get your settings onto Big Ball, have the round duration for however long you want the practice to last, put the maximum targets on 1 to 2, put the target movement speed on idle, put the distance on near, and have infinite magazine ammo. Once you hit apply, press begin, and then shoot a ball and practice flicking macro to your next ball. It should be pretty easy to do. You don't really have to actually hit the target, just practice your actual macro flicks, because the micro flick to actually hit the target will be something that we go over later. If you want to practice your micro flicking, all you have to do is turn it onto small ball, turn it onto however many targets you want, put it still on idle, keep it at whatever distance you want, and then still keep on infinite magazine ammo. Now, just because the balls are smaller, it makes your brain actively try to train hitting smaller targets with smaller and more precise movements. So once you do the macro flick, you can practice kind of micro flicking and like getting your crosshair there. You don't really have to macro flick, you can kind of just get your crosshair there and then practice the little micro flick, the micro readjustment, right, from left to right, right to left, right to left, left to right, down to up to down. You get the idea. Just practice your little like micro readjustments. And if you're using Aim Lab's grid shot is another great exercise to do this with. You can drill this for just 30 minutes to an hour each day, and after a week or so of practicing this every single day for even just a short amount of time, you will notice a considerable difference between your aim before and how consistent your aim was to the aim that you have now, and how consistent and accurate you are after doing this simple exercise. But now that we've gone over the 2 easiest steps to improving your aim, let's go over something a bit more difficult, which is my 3rd tip: recoil control. Now, for some people, this may not be as difficult as it would be for other people, specifically because of their sensitivity, which we'll go over later. I know a lot of people think that recoil control is easier than learning how to flick and learning the first tip of crosshair placement, but again, for some people, it's just not, which is why I put it at the 3rd step. Like I said, it would be difficult for more people than others, specifically because of the sensitivity that you're using. Your sensitivity can make it very easy for you to control recoil effectively because it makes you pull down faster and easier the higher of a sensitivity you have, allowing for seamless recoil control in weapons that others with slower sensitivities might not be able to control as easily. Now, I'm not saying that you should change your sensitivity to a fast sensitivity. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. Your sensitivity is something that is native to what is most naturally comfortable to you as a player, which is why I'm personally such an advocate for not copying other people's sensitivities, because everybody that you're trying to copy has good aim because that sensitivity they're using is just specifically good for them. It's not like they found this magical sensitivity that's going to work for everybody because it's just such a good sensitivity. No, they found a sensitivity that they liked and they drilled it for years, which is what you need to do also. Find a sensitivity that is naturally just the most comfortable for you and practice that until you're just as good as the people you're trying to emulate. That being said, if you have trouble controlling your recoil because of your sensitivity or even for other reasons too, here's how you can get better. Now let's go back to the shooting range, but this time stay in lane 1 where you just spawned. Here, you'll see this target. What you want to do is put the target to 5 meters, and if you want to learn how to control the recoil of a specific weapon, all you have to do is look at the bottom of the target. Then, without moving your mouse or trying to control the recoil at all, just hold down left click and look at where the bullets go. Now, as you can see with the G36C that I have equipped on Ash, it goes up a lot and it goes slightly to the left. So if you want to control the recoil of this weapon, all you would have to do was pull down and pull slightly to the right. You want to do the exact opposite of where the bullets are going to control the bullets. So like I said, it's going up and to the left, so what I'm going to do is control and go down to the right. And now, this is what my recoil control looks like. Now, I'm overcompensating because I'm trying to record a video, which is kind of ironic, but you get the idea. Once you learn where the actual bullets go, you can get a pretty good grouping kind of like that. And once you've mastered that grouping, you can move it to 10 meters, clear off the target really quickly, if it would work, hello. And then you can control the recoil here as well. Like, it's pretty easy to do. Now, obviously, on some guns, this will be easier compared to other guns, like Twitch F2, the SMG-12, Ella's Scorpion, the SMG-11, etc. This brings me into my other tip on how to control recoil better, shooting your gun differently. Let's talk about the SMG-11, which is the gun I have on right now specifically, because most people know this weapon pretty well. It's a classic weapon that most people have gotten down. This is a great SMG, and once you get the recoil down packed, it becomes an absolute laser of a gun. If you haven't had the privilege of learning quite what controlling this weapon is like, I'll let you in on a little secret. You need to burst fire. In this clip where I'm playing smoke and using the SMG-11, at no point am I mag dumping any of the enemies that I'm seeing or trying to kill. I'm just firing the first few bullets that are necessary enough to actually kill that enemy. This is because some guns, like the ones I mentioned earlier on screen, are easier to control when it comes to their first few bullets, like the SMG-11. Memorizing the recoil of 1 to 7 or 1 to 10 bullets in a gun is much easier than learning all 25 to 30 bullets in a mag of a specific weapon and for all of the weapons in the game. So if you're having real trouble learning with a specific gun, just burst fire with that gun and only learn the first few bullets of recoil, kind of like you would with the SMG-11 or the Twitch F2, and then you can move on from there and you'll still be good at the weapon in the process because you're still learning. This tip takes a lot more time and skill to master just because of the simple fact that there's so many weapons in this game that you have to learn, and once you learn it, sometimes you won't even consciously remember to control the recoil in game because you're not actually trying to practice what you've been practicing outside of the game in the game, because you get so caught up in the moment, your adrenaline's pumping, you're in a clutch situation, you're just in the heat of a gunfight. It happens, sometimes you just forget, which is another reason why this tip specifically is so hard to get down for most players, and why I had to put it as number 3 on the list and not as one of the other tips, even though recoil control can seem like a very easy concept to understand at first. But there's a reason it's not last, and that's because a tip that can take much more time and skill to learn for the average Seeds player is my final tip, tip 4, tracking. It's great if you're able to have good first shot accuracy, which is the thing that we've been talking about for the past 3 tips more or less, but on the off chance that you miss the first shot or that flick, or your crosshair was slightly lower than it should be, you need to know how to track and what tracking is and how to do it effectively in the first place. Now, the reason this is so hard for Siege players specifically to learn, and why I put it at the end of the list, is because it's something that a lot of Siege players don't really have to use in the first place. Gunfights in Rainbow Six Siege happen fast, a lot faster than other games, which means that as long as you hit that first shot, you've essentially won, and tracking the enemy after you hit that first shot isn't really necessary. Tracking for Siege players, because of this, is an unused and untrained muscle and skill that most Siege players don't even have developed because they don't feel like they need to, which is why it's the hardest skill specifically for Siege players to learn. This could not be more wrong though. If you've listened to my past 3 tips, you know that just because you've learned how to do them doesn't mean you've necessarily mastered them. At times, you're still going to mess up and have bad crosshair placement. You're still going to miss some flicks. You're still going to forget to control recoil or just not do it outright. You're human. You're gonna make some mistakes. It happens. If you make those mistakes and you're bad at tracking, which is just the art of keeping your crosshair on track of a player, then you've essentially lost the gunfight because you have no other skill to fall back on. Tracking for you needs to be that skill. If you miss that first shot onto somebody, you need to have the skill to keep your crosshair on that moving target to finish the kill and win the gunfight. Tracking in Siege is a skill you develop to fall back on. It's a safety net for you in case you slip up on the other 3 skills, which is why it's the most important and the final skill on this list. Not only is it the most important, but it's also the hardest to develop naturally because, like I said, you don't do it often as a Siege player. Especially if you're already good at the first 3 steps and you're not really training this 4th step in the first place. So here's how you can train tracking and get better at it in the process. Go back to the shooting range and go back to lane 3. Go to the options tab. The target type doesn't really matter, but personally I like having it on the dummy just for realism. Then turn headshot only to on, put maximum targets to whatever you want it on, but this time instead of having the target movement speed on idle, have it on run, or walk if you're starting out, and sprint whenever you've gotten pretty good at tracking. Now actually begin the shooting range exercise. Once the dummies spawn in, you can use your crosshair and track them. The goal isn't to actually shoot the dummies and kill them like it was with the other 3 tips. The goal is to have your crosshair on their head for as long as you possibly can. And again, you can make this more difficult by changing the speed, changing the distance of how far away the dummies are. And what you can do also is you can shoot them once they get to the end of wherever you want them to go and then go to a different target. This will teach you to shoot somebody and then add in, oh my god, I can't shoot them. Add in flicking back into it and then tracking after your flick, right? You pick one target, flick to a different target, track him. Flick to a different target, track him. Flick to a different target, track him, right? You don't have to shoot him, but you get the idea. You want to track somebody, go to the next person, track somebody. Go to the next person, track somebody, right? And this will get your tracking so much better. This will get you a simple baseline for how tracking feels and how to improve it. The next step for this is going into arcades and playing arcades and playing them a lot. I play them so much they're a part of my warm-up routine, which means I'm playing them every day. And if I ever have a bad game in ranked where I'm just not doing well, I'll do an arcade in between my next ranked game to refresh my aim. So I do arcades a lot. The reason for this being is because in arcades, people are more aggressive and they swing more, which will make you have to drill tracking more than you ever have before in your entire Siege career. Now that you've gone into arcades and you've been able to practice tracking on actual players who are swinging you, tracking should be something that you're easily able to adapt over a long period of time. And like I said, it's not something that you'll use often, so it's going to take a while to get down, and it's going to be one of the hardest things that as a Siege player you'll learn, which is why I put it as the 4th and hardest tip in this list that you need to go over if you want to get good aim. Now, with this skill trained, as well as the other 3, you can easily get better aim than you've ever had before. And if you want to get even better aim, though, check out this next video. My name's Alka, and I'll see you there. Later.